Now introducing the Minor Wisdom Trio! Minor Wisdom!
Hey, how you doing? Anyway, this week I've got Mandy Epley on. Super excited about this one. We weren't friends on Facebook until very recently. I don't know why, but she is the one that if you are in TTAO, if you're a contest manager or an adjudicator, you see her post all the time on the Facebook, posting things, reminders. We just recently voted for some positions that were available, that were open. And so, yeah, she's constantly posting on there. And so I finally said, I honestly, I didn't know why I had never had her on before, but here we are. Here's the episode. Coming close to, I think, 175. At least that to my count, that's what I'm getting at right now. Really close. So that's really cool. 175 episodes. Mind you, a couple of those were, like WrestleMania related, which that's going to be coming up not too far in the future. We didn't do one last year because that's when I was on my little break, on my hiatus. But we are going to do one this year for sure. So Mandy Epley, fun chat. I knew nothing about her. And when she started her, with the conversation, I know it's on the record, but I don't remember if this was before we started recording or not, that she mentioned something about being superintendent. It was, an interim thing. And I was like, holy crap, I didn't realize you were like a big deal and stuff. So, no offense. I just didn't know how big of a deal she was until we started chatting. And then I was like, wow, all right, I've got some royalty up in here. So that was really fun, and I had a good time with her. Going to be recording a lot this coming week with the winter holiday, as us Jews call it. We don't call it Christmas break. But I've got quite a few in the can lined up, ready to go, enough to at least get me way past T-Tech. And hopefully I'm getting some content at T-Tech as well. Speaking of T-Tech, please register. I don't know why you haven't yet. I don't know. Maybe you could tell me. Maybe you could give me your reason why you haven't registered. It is July. Yeah, registration's open. January 12th. Let's back up. January 12th to the 14th. I will be there on the 11th, but you don't have to be. But January 12th to the 14th, we are going to be there with bells on, ready to go. We've got a number of amazing presenters. Cameron Ware is going to be there. And for those Northerners, you should probably know Cameron. Even us Southerners should know Cameron too. He's a projection genius, design stuff. He's kind of like Mitch Starks, who does the Theater Avenue stuff, just more local. But Cameron will be there Saturday. He only has time to do one session, but he's going to show us projection mapping and all this kind of stuff. We've got lighting people there. We've got somebody from Verilight coming, Bobby Harrell. We've got Katie Cross from Covenant doing some stuff with LEDs. Then we've got directing workshops with quite a number of people. Rachel Gomez is going to be there giving tips and tricks, not just with UIL design, but just as like a longtime educator who's retired and earned the right to do that. We've got Kat Steffens. We've got all kinds of people. We've also got some inclusion stuff happening. Kirsty Lewis is going to be in attendance as well with two people, and they're going to talk a lot about one of the people that she's going to be presenting with is an actress that has Down syndrome. I believe actress. I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me on that. But she has an actor coming with her who has Down syndrome, and they're going to do a few workshops talking about inclusion and how you can involve certain elements of your school community and population that aren't just able-bodied. And I'm very passionate about this. I shouldn't say passionate. I have a history of this theater of inclusive theater. with Dionysus Theater that was around in the early 2000s. Debbie Nowinski, even into the mid to late, or we're in the mid to late 2000s, even into the 2010s. But Dionysus, I performed on stage. I did lighting for them. I did scenery for them. But they were a theater company that incorporated everybody. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you're blind, deaf, mentally handicapped, physically. There was a wonderful actress. She was a quadriplegic. You wouldn't know if you just didn't pay attention to that stuff. There's just so many awesome opportunities that you can create for your department and for your kids, and growing an educational environment for everybody that's just all inclusive, that's equal. And anyway, we're going to, Kirsty Lewis is going to be focusing a lot of her energy on that. That's kind of what her specialty is. And we're bringing her in to do that. So enough about T-Tech, but you gotta sign up. You gotta, and get here. I don't care if you have a musical. I don't care. Do you want your now to be great, or do you want your forever to be great? Huh? How about that? Tattoo that on your tramp stamp. Anyway, I hope everybody's doing well. I'm excited for winter break. I'm excited for cold weather. I'm excited for Hanukkah. Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Let's have a party and all dance to Chorah. But Hanukkah is tonight if you're listening to this on Sunday. Or actually for the next week, if you're listening to this, it's tonight. So it is Hanukkah season, coming up on Christmas season, and all of that good stuff. Anyway, buy a shirt for me, Minor Wisdom. Maybe that'd be a hell of a Christmas gift. Am I right, guys? Am I right? And like things and do things and all that good stuff. So hope everybody has a great week. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Mandy Epley. I enjoyed it. So that's all that matters. Holla back, girl.
I started doing theater in elementary school. I was super fascinated with a neighbor of mine that was on the Bluebell popsicle box. She had gotten a deal with her and her brother, who had an agent. Got the deal to be the kids on the Bluebell popsicle box, and I just was fascinated with the idea that you could perform, or your image could be out there for people to see. And I just started pursuing any way that I could. My parents were not necessarily theater people. So they were, though, supportive of whatever I was interested in. So I had a great elementary choir teacher who saw that I was eager to be on stage and speaking. And so she put me in a speaking role in the Christmas play. And from there, I just found every opportunity, whether it was Pioneer Days at school, to do that. And then at my church, I wrote an Easter play when I was in middle school that they produced, and I got to star in. And then in middle school, I wrote a play for my middle school, and they actually allowed me to do that play there as well. So just kind of evolved from there. High school in Plano is a hotbed of awesome theater, has been for a long time. And so I was blessed to be able to try out for theater major studies with Lisa Hale and get into her program. I think she really taught me some deeper sides of theater, that it wasn't just Christmas pageants and church pageants and kind of cute, fun plays, but really, we started doing things with Arthur Miller and William Saroyan and learning about theater with deeper messages. My junior summer, though, was a game changer for me. Went to the Stephen F. Austin Theater Camp, and I had the opportunity to be in a Greek production, And there was a young lady in the production who had not come from a very strong theater program, and she was struggling. And it was an all-female cast, which can be very critical and catty. And they were not happy that we were not going to have the best scene because she didn't know her lines and she was really struggling. And so um, I think they had just given up and we're just going to look bad and it's all her fault. And that day we had a dance where all the kids were supposed to go to this dance. And I begged for them to let me stay behind and work with her. And, of course, they didn't want to leave us. And I said, look, we're literally going to be in the dorm room. I'm going to be running lines. I'm going to be talking to her about character. If you can you can come by and you can check on us, but we're not going anywhere. And so they did. And I worked with her that whole night. And the next day, she was so much stronger. She felt confident. We talked through some of her concerns. And as I left camp, they gave us these packets, and it was your critique of each of the scenes you'd been in. And with it, some encouraging notes from the students that were directing these scenes or the professors. And one of them said, "Have you ever considered being a teacher?" And growing up, my parents had said, "You can do anything you put your mind to. So do whatever you want, but don't be a teacher." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And they said, "Well, they get treated so poorly. And we don't want to see you in a profession where you're not valued and you're not treated well." And so I had never really considered being a theater teacher. And when I got that note, it really resonated with me that I found a lot of joy in helping somebody else find character, find that character's journey, find that character's voice. And so my senior year, I, took opportunities to mentor other people and help them be better at their craft, and then decided that I would interview and audition at TETA. It was TETA back then. So we're old. But I got a scholarship to Webster, and I got a scholarship to Sam Houston State University. I went to both locations, and my dad said, "I want you to go to Sam for 2 years. If you don't like it, I'll let you go anywhere you want." And I loved going to Sam Houston State University. I studied with really fantastic professors there. I met wonderful people there and had the opportunity to get both a stellar theater degree and a fantastic teaching degree. So quickly out of that, I went to Friendswood High School and taught with Kathy Peldrell for a year, and got to see a program that was fully developed, really successful in One Act Play. Believe it or not, I taught technical theater, which was not necessarily my forte, but I was so eager to learn and go to an awesome program. And I quickly realized how important it was to me to have my own program. And so I took a friend of mine suggested I look at an opening that was in a place I had never heard of in Texas, Shirt Cibolo. And Shirt Cibolo is outside of San Antonio. And I interviewed at a place called Samuel Clemens High School, the Samuel Clemens Buffaloes, and their theater. I remember coming in, and the theater was so old. It was built in, I believe, 1968, and they had just changed the lighting, and they were so proud that they had new lighting. And you could tell where the old lighting had been because it was the pull down Frankenstein lighting, and it had like charred the wall. And she said the only reason we've been able to get new lighting is because a kid got shot. So, well, thank God we have new lighting. The curtains were the texture of your grandmother's curtains in the 1970s. And they were cream colored, which no longer were cream colored, as you can imagine, a bunch of high school kids touching them. they had one giant room to store everything, and the custodian had decided it was really important to wax the flooring in that room. So they had pulled everything out onto the stage, everything from a Virgin Mary statue to lumber to old paint was out there on the floor. The seats were torn and tattered. And I thought to myself, coming from, the blessing of being at a space like Friendswood, oh, this isn't going to work. I'm going to use this as a practice interview. This was really nice to meet you guys, but no way. And she said, well, let's head back to my office. And I was heading out of the theater, and as crazy as this sounds, I stand by it. I heard a tiny voice say, help me. And I immediately thought, somebody's trapped in all of this junk that they've pulled out. Somebody's back in there. So I turned back and looked, and there was no one. And as I walked back to her office, I thought, this place needs me. It needs me in a way that Friendswood didn't need me. Um, needs somebody who knows theater who can say, this is what needs to happen in the space to make it a workable space to do productions. And so she said, well, hey, I know you're going back to Houston. I have 2 people to interview, but unless they can fly, I'm going to give you a call. And so that started my journey in Central Texas. And I taught there for 4 years and then got the call to open a new high school in Northside ISD, which is Warren. And it was awesome to go into a brand new space, awesome black box. But I had been very blessed at Clemens to do some great work with some amazing kids. And so the word was out that I might be available. And so I opened Warren and did some great work there. And then they opened another new high school, Brandeis. And so I opened that campus as well. And we went to state while I was at Brandeis with After Juliet. First time anyone had done that production. And I fought for that show. The publishing company did not want to allow for a one-act play cut of the show. And so they sent me back word that I couldn't do the show. And then I'd have to, if I wanted to deal with that in any way, shape, or form, I would have to talk with the playwright, which is something I had never done before. And so I contacted Sharman McDonald's agent, and which is now is a little bit more commonplace, but back then we just didn't do that. And so I did, and I said, hey, you wrote this for kids to perform in the UK. Can kids are going to perform it here, so can I do it? And so I sent her my cutting. I did the same thing with Theophilus North. And so we had a lot of back and forth and getting to know playwrights, and that became a real big part of my program, is talking with playwrights and helping kids learn about playwrights. So after my time at Brandeis, I got my administrative degree, and I started to get pulled into the office more to be an AP. I have never wanted to discipline kids. It's never been part of what I love about teaching. So I said, no, I think my dream is to be a fine arts director. And so I applied to be the fine arts director at Comel ISD. And I became the first fine arts director there and got to really learn about all the arts and supporting all of those folks who make the arts happen for our kids and really grow programs. And then I like to say I became the casting director of the district. I moved to be the executive director of HR. And so started bringing in great people to make the organization better. And then I became chief of staff, quickly followed by assistant superintendent of strategic initiatives and programs, which is a giant title for I help make ideas happen that the superintendent comes up with at 3 a.m. And I'm over every single thing a kid really wants to come to school for. So everything from CTE to athletics to fine arts to student leadership, PE, health and wellness, everything from table tennis to robotics. So most recently, my superintendent resigned unexpectedly, and so I was named acting superintendent of the school district. So that was a real journey for about 5 months. And now I have a brand new superintendent. So that's from start to finish.
Wow.
All of the other stuff that's theater related was personal. So
Yeah.
I continued to act and do things on my own. So I've done murder mystery dinner theaters in Houston. Most recently, which is actually about 10 years ago now that I think of it, um, I opened a theater company with a former student called Inception Theater, and that still goes strong here in San Antonio. I come in and direct every now and again, and I'm artistic director for the theater. And then I did perform at the Classic Theater with one of my favorite shows of all time that I taught every year, All My Sons. And I got to be Sue Bayless, which was a dream role for me.
Wow. Cool. And that's it. And we're done. No, that was that's quite a bit. I didn't know the most recent history. I knew the Clemens. And the only reason I really knew the Clemens thing is because I was in Fort Bend for so long and knew Clements with a
Yes.
T, right? And so on a lot of like when I started with Thespians, I was doing the tech relay stuff. And I don't know if you were there at the time. You might, yeah, you probably were there. I kept messing up the alphabetical order of Clemens and Clements. So anyway, that's my connection to that.
I went to Fort Bend schools until 6th grade, so I would have
Oh,
actually gone to Clements
oh, really?
had we not moved to Plano. So I always think it's kind of funny that I ended up at Clemens.
What elementary school did you go to?
Good question.
Did you know a Corey Novi or
Mm-mm.
Lindsay Novi? Okay.
Meadows is the
Okay,
element.
Meadows. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't because I've got some friends that were in that system as well. They went to Clements. So anyway, enough about that. This is about you. So you taught for a year at Friendswood. I love Kathy. The biggest. Well, I have two massive memories of Kathy. One is we traveled to Edinburgh together without kids. She ended up going the next year with kids. I did not. My kids, the parents fell through with their promise, their end of the deal. But so I spent time with her at Edinburgh and Amy. And
Oh,
then she was the last interview I had for this podcast right before COVID. Like literally, she got a
oh,
phone call during the interview that UIL was done. And so
wow.
like that's like a huge memory, and I know that sticks with a lot of Texas theater educators. So
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I knew Kathy from hosting one act play at Sam Houston,
mhm,
and I would be like a student stage manager.
yeah,
So I saw her kids work and the stuff that she did and was really impressed. And so when I had the opportunity to go work there,
right,
was excited to do that. And they did the Crucible that year and went to state. So,
yeah,
uh, and then I had the opportunity to kind of work with her again. I taught 9 years at Texas A&M Corpus's theater
okay,
camp on the coast. And so the years that she was there um, directing,
cool.
got to spend some more time with her. That was great.
So did you have like was Penny and Miss Mac and all them? They were all at Sam.
So
Was
Miss
Tom Pryor there? Yeah.
Tom Pryor had just left.
Okay.
So Dr. Soar,
Okay.
Penny, it was Penny's first year when I came in. And Miss McIntyre actually recruited me. She was the one who offered me the scholarship at TTA.
Okay.
And I was in two of Maureen's shows. I was in Picnic and I was in After the Fall as a freshman. And I was never in Penny's shows, but her stage management class was a
Yeah.
game changer. She's fantastic. And I was a favorite of Dr. Stoar, so I was in a couple of his shows. And then obviously Dr. Miller, huge
Yeah.
influence on my directing. I remember having a conversation with him the end of my junior year, and they let seniors direct in the main season if you were selected. And I said, how do you go about doing that? I'm thinking I'm interested. And he was shocked. He was like, I would never have thought you'd want to direct. And so I was able to get in the main season and directed a show in rep with a guest artist. And that was also
Yeah.
one of those kind of moments where you're like, okay, I love to act, but I think my strength really is directing.
Right. Do you did you said you went to both Webster and Sam to view the campus, I mean?
I
Okay.
did. I did. And the irony of Webster, I wanted desperately to go to
Right.
Webster. And I think mostly because the hype at Plano East was that was the best place to be. And so I think, I mean, I'll be honest. I have nothing to lose at this point in my career. I think that I think that I was a little worried about being a theater major. And I thought people would be like, oh, well, but she got accepted into the best place. So she's good and it'll be good. And have some more confidence and give me in turn some confidence about choosing it as a career. And so when I went, I loved it. I loved that it was, not Texas. And so I felt like, oh, now I'm making it because I'm going to be somewhere else. I love that it was attached to a repertory theater and had that relationship. I think there was some security in that. But I'll tell you, one of the things that I noticed right away were that most of the professors were from UT. They had graduated from UT.
Yeah.
And so as I watched the classes, I thought to myself, well, this is a lot of money to get the training from people who got their training from UT. So if I want this training cheaper, I could just go to UT.
Yep.
And I think that's the practical side of me that has always made me, a little less dreamy as a theater person.
Yeah. Also the cold.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it, it was snowing the whole time we were there. I think that was kind of an awe factor for me, but I'm sure it would have lost its luster pretty fast.
Yeah. A couple days fine. Weeks, months, not so much. So I
You
get
also
that.
remember 17, so telling my dad, "You want me to go to a place where there's a prison?" I really Sam did not have the kind of prestige as Webster did in that regard. But I'll tell you, I've never regretted Sam from the standpoint of the value of what I got. I tell people all the time, the musical theater program was just starting as I was leaving. Um, but we did musicals. I had the opportunity to do those things. But it's like there was a plan. There really was kind of a master plan because when I got to Clemens, they hired a theater uh, teacher in hiring me, but they also hired a technical theater teacher at the same time. And her name was Alicia Tadema, and she was awesome and fantastic. And she had gone to Webster, and I was so in awe of her. But she said, I'm $22,000 in debt because I went to Webster, graduated, didn't have a teaching certificate. So then I had to go to UT and get my teaching certificate. And here I was coming straight out of Sam, no debt, teaching certificate. We're both at the same place in our career. And she's got debt. And I thought, this is God
Yeah.
telling me you went where you're supposed to go.
You did the right thing. Yeah. So if you had not if you had taken your parents' advice, or not their advice necessarily, but you can do anything you want except be a teacher, what do you think you'd be doing right now? What do you think you would have gone into?
I've thought about this a lot because as I've moved into administration and met with different people that are in politics and different, aspects of leadership, I think, wow, I wish I would have known the power that I had, um, that I could truly do anything. And I think that's one of the things that I'm always telling people when I go to um, judge or do workshops is please remind your students that if you can do theater, you can do anything. And I mean that sincerely. It's truly, truly the skills that it takes to get up there and not only be confident to learn someone's lines, interpret it, do it, build sets, create, put it all together, make those connections to tell a story and have a big picture. Um, know that there is a deadline, that we're not going to say, oh, sorry, I know we said it was going to be December 1st at 7 p.m., but it's not. That it's actually going to happen regardless of where we're at. People are going to pay money to see it, and there's going to be expectations, and you're going to need to be able to meet those expectations. The intensity of that, the teamwork that takes, the skills it takes, I think set you up to do anything. So I think overall, I'm a creative. I know that. I love all things creative. So when I was younger, before I kind of got, convinced that theater was the path I was going to go, I sang, I danced, and theater just was the best place to be because you could do all of those things. But I also loved stuff like floral design. So I don't know. I mean, it could have been a florist, but interior designer. I loved creating the sets. I loved decorating. But I also just know I'm passionate about storytelling, and I'm passionate about humanity and how we communicate. And I think COVID was a big eye opener to how important live theater is to telling the human story, to connecting us, to seeing what we have that is the same more than what is different. So I can easily see myself getting involved in politics, getting involved in um, leadership roles where I could make a difference in helping to communicate human need, and how we can navigate and the craziness that is our world. So yeah, I could definitely see that.
Okay. That's fair. I'll accept it. So I had a question about the two high schools that you opened, the new high schools. So what did you learn going into your second new opening, or excuse me, what did you learn from your first opening that you took with you into your second opening that maybe you wish you had known the first time?
Oh yeah. Um,
I know there are probably quite a few things that you could answer with.
I think, the biggest is you will never have a moment, and by moment I don't know how long to say it is, because my experience has varied, but you will never have that moment where everyone in the building is new to that space, right? We're all coming from different experiences, but we know that, and if you have a good, strong leader, you have a unified vision, right? And you have this opportunity to say, we can do it any way we want. We can set the tradition any way we want. Um, I think the hardest thing for me at Samuel Clemens was what I like to refer to as teaching with a ghost. You had somebody who had developed the program and spent years there and had established these traditions. And there was nothing wrong with those traditions, but they weren't my traditions. And so everything I said, especially in the beginning, was walking on eggshells of, well, that's not the way we've done it before. And building that trust, right? So I was very cognizant the second time I opened a school about being intentional about those choices, and knowing that it goes beyond the theater department. Like you're gonna set up. This is when we have our auditions, and this is how I communicate with parents, or create a booster club, or don't create a booster club, right? But also, down to those minute details of, what does our circle look like before the show starts, and what does one act look like for us, win, lose, or draw, right? But also just from the get-go, the opportunity to say, I'm going to collaborate with people that are not in this department. I remember when I opened Warren, one of the first things I did was I went out there and I met the head football coach. And I said, our first production is our first of six improv nights. And we're going to do it on Monday nights. And so it's going to conflict with Monday Night Football. So the first one is going to be kind of a spoof on Monday Night Football, and I need jerseys. And he was like, sure, I can give you some practice jerseys. And from that point on, I had a relationship with him. I had relationships with, a Spanish teacher that I carried over. When I went to Brandeis, I immediately met the Spanish teacher right away because I said, "Hey, let me tell you about this project I did." Her Spanish 3-4 kids did a night of Lorca, and they did Casa de Bernardo Alba in Espanol. My kids did Blood Wedding in English, and we had a night of Lorca, and we flip-flop classes so I could teach the theater side. She taught the culture and the Spanish side to them. And, I just think that when you open a building and you create a program, there's so much rich opportunity to go beyond the boundaries of your classroom and really set some new traditions and some new relationships that'll benefit your kids. And then it will make you and your program indispensable. And if there's anything I could tell a brand new teacher, it would be that: be indispensable. Don't just be the crazy drama teacher. That's what they expect. That's what they
Yeah.
think they're getting. Be indispensable and do these things that make the whole campus shine. And then your program will get what it needs. You'll have the respect to do what you want to do and to take risks. The other piece I would say is kind of perfunctory, but it's the building.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people realize you have 1 year, sometimes 2, with a warranty on a brand new facility. So get in there and check it out and get up on the catwalk, do the things that you may feel uncomfortable doing to see, does this building have what it's supposed to have? One of my favorite stories with that, when I opened Brandeis, I walked into the costume storage room and it was gorgeous. I mean, they'd done all the piping, uh, washer and dryer. I mean, great, right? And then I noticed they had built a shelf with a dehumidifier, and I was like, this is awesome. They've thought of everything, except I looked for where you plug in the dehumidifier, and it had a little drawing on the cinder block in purple marker of an outlet. And it reminded me of Harold and the Purple Crayon. And I thought to myself, I don't know if this outlet is just going to materialize at some point in time. But, it's stuff like that I think you get really excited about a new space and you don't think about there's things that may not work. There's things that need to get fixed or might not be as safe as they should be. So, yeah, that'd be another thing about opening a school
Yeah.
I'd mention.
That's really good advice, actually, because, there are lots of new spaces that I won't speak of because I'm still close to some of the people that made those decisions. But there are some spaces that have corners that have been cut, but they're not necessarily intentional corners. They were just forgetful corners. So, I get that. That's funny, though, the purple outline.
Yeah. So I do, one of the blessings of becoming a fine arts director and meeting some amazing people. I met Jim Van Zant, who's had been the fine arts director for Round Rock, and he has a company called Enhance the Arts. And so he called me and said, hey, I would love your theater advice on this. So I do facilities and program reviews now, and I've seen, things that I just shake my head like, what is that? And it is, I think it's, being in this level of the business now, when we have these bond meetings and the new facility for theater is there, it's very easy to say, well, that fly system's, $2.2 million. They can still do theater without that, right? So that goes. But how things get put in, if you're not very careful and you're not working with a really good architect who understands, they're meeting all the requirements, right? They're like, oh, ADA, so let me slap this platform with an elevator right in the middle of your stage, right? They're not thinking through those things. They're not thinking through, I saw a facility the other day where they built a booth. It used to be a cafeteria, so they converted it to a standalone theater space, but they created a booth where you have to go to the lobby to enter the booth. And they hadn't considered at all the supervision issues that causes, because you're not supposed to give a kid a key, right? So you as the teacher are supposed to totally leave the class, unsupervised to get in the booth. So I was like, first thing you guys have to do is cut a door into this thing. It's just simple things like that. But I think, you forget not all of the right people are at the table
Right.
when those decisions are being made, or unfortunately, which is the case at one of our facilities. I remember when I came, I asked the teacher who had been there a long time, you know, hey, when they gave you this space, why didn't you make sure they gave you a curtain that wrapped all the way around the black box? And she said, I was just so grateful to not be in a cafetorium anymore that I just said yes and thanks to whatever they would give me. And I think that happens a lot of times. People don't want to be the kind of, oh, I'm ungrateful, but there is a lot of stuff that you should, I mean, it doesn't hurt to speak up and ask, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to elaborate anymore because I don't want to get in trouble with anybody. But yeah, it's I was just in a space actually not too long ago that same situation. The office was built in a way that, and actually a nice space. It's a really nice space, but the office had the door going out into the hall, and you had to go back into the classroom. Whereas you could see what was happening in the classroom, but you couldn't get to it. So if a kid, God forbid, something happens to a child in that classroom, you're seeing it, and then you have to walk out back here, go out the hall, back into the class, and it's like they fixed that problem. They like you just said, all you have to do is put a door in right here, and they did that. But I don't know. The initial plans did not include said door, so it's funny. It is. I have a really good friend. I've talked about him on this podcast before, John Shellady, who's great, and I encourage people to look him up. He works with Gensler, the architecture firm, and he was hired because he has a theater background, and he is that's his job, is design theaters and consult on these spaces and stuff, performing arts spaces, really, not just necessarily theaters, but also music halls and things. So, but yeah, good advocate. So speaking of advocacy, uh, you are one of very few, probably, theater background administrators that has kind of gone up the ladder. I know there are quite a few. I know, Philip Taylor's making his way up. He'll be Secretary of Education at some point in the next 20 years, I'm sure. And I've told him that to his face. But what sort of responsibility does that put on you to make you an advocate, even though, like you said, you were assistant soup for, or associate soup or assistant
Acting superintendent, yeah.
okay. Well, before that, you said you were overall the
Yeah,
okay.
so yeah.
Yeah, you were overall the kind of, quote, I'll say it, fun stuff. I'm going to say that. Those aren't your words. I'll say it though. And so that means that's a lot of different hats that you're wearing. But as a theater background person or as a performing arts person, did you feel some sense of like responsibility that I've got to make sure I'm looking out for these people, and not just necessarily the ones I know, but also the ones that are just the ones I don't know too, the everybody. So I'll stop blabbing.
No, absolutely. I think I think I've learned in this position, certainly I came in with a sense of advocacy for theater and what theater does, and being a choir kid, the same thing, being a dance kid, same thing. But I will say, as I have taken on these different areas, um, truly good programs that train kids, that prepare kids, we're all cut from the same cloth. And I think one of the things that was hard for me, because I think it's drilled into us as fine arts people, is that, the athletic people are so different, and they do things differently, and they get so much more, and they do so much more. And if we would just be treated like athletics, right? Well, I'm over athletics, and I can tell you that they are just as indoctrinated that we have things they don't, that they if we could just get what fine arts and the respect that fine arts has, right? And you don't ever know that as a fine arts person. And so as I've gotten to know those coaches, and we've let down guards on both sides, um, they could be some fantastic theater directors. They are telling a story in their own right with their kids. They're prepping their kids very similarly to how I know we prep our kids, and not just for competition, but for life. They believe what we believe about. These are skill sets that make people good people. And I think if we were more unified as electives, as classes of choice, whatever you want to call them, I really do think our voice would be stronger. My PhD that I'm doing right now is about making arts the center of education. And really, it could be anything that isn't core content. Is that what would happen if you went to school and that was the main vehicle, right? It's what kids come to school for. So what if I learned history and math and science and politics and writing and reading through these contents? Um, when I talk about the cross curricular things that teachers can do, everybody lights up, right? So I think that my advocacy is about, don't underestimate that this is playtime for kids. This is downtime. I hear that a lot lately with the anxiety and the stress that kids are facing, and that COVID seemed to increase. Is, well, our students are in all of these AP classes, and so they need downtime like theater. And it's very frustrating to hear that, because I know what they mean. I think we all know what they mean, but I want to say, I did more writing in my theater class than they did in their AP class. My kids would ask me all the time, why do we do so much writing in here? I said, because you're going to be more than a theater kid. And even if you are a theater kid, you're going to be a theater kid that is a quadruple threat. You're going to sing, you're going to dance, you're going to act, and you're going to write your own material, so that when no one will hire you, you can produce your own stuff. And I feel very passionately that what we teach in the arts, and specifically in theater, really transcends all the content areas and makes connections for kids that they might not want to learn about physics. They may not want to learn about, um, a particular time in history. But when you do a show like Radium Girls, um, you know, now you've just opened up a whole world of science and history to a kid that might not ever think they're successful in those areas. But they'll absolutely tell you the story of Radium Girls. So I feel passionate about making sure that kids get what they need and they see that learning isn't siloed. And I think theater does that very well. But I also believe that you can't scrimp on the stuff, right? Theater is expensive. If you're going to do it well, you need lights, you need sound, you need a space that is dedicated and that teachers can get in and work with their kids on. And so, absolutely advocate for, when you're looking at cutting a budget for a new build or for providing a space for those things, that the benefit of that, because it goes beyond it being a content area. It really is the heart of a community. If you do it well, that space, that theater space, those black box spaces, those outdoor learning spaces that can become outdoor performance spaces or environmental theater, are really spaces where the community connects to the school. So yeah, I feel like it's an opportunity to really give a voice to theater teachers as I sit in these meetings, and but also advocate for teachers in general.
Yeah.
Uh, you sometimes are in these meetings and it's a lot of kind of high level best practice, right? And we're going to write a manual and it's going to get delivered to a teacher. And I remind people, like, what it was to be a teacher. When was the last time you read anything that came from central office? So I think that's a big part of it, is um, don't lose sight of what it was to be a teacher as you
Right.
make decisions for teachers.
So you touched on something that I don't think I've mentioned this very much, but the one of the Depends on how you want to look at it. If you like to read, then it's good. If you don't like to read, then it's bad. But working in a private school now, we have required reading over the summer. Just one
Mhm.
book. It's not like it's like how it used to be in middle school where you had to read like 12 books in the summer.
Right.
Um, but we this past year we read a book called Permission to Feel, and it's by Dr. Mark Brackett. And one of the things you kind of just touched on this a little bit with the idea of I go to theater to like I need some downtime to go to theater, which is not really what it is. But he talks about in this book, and I'm not trying to sell it, but I do recommend it to people. He talks about how when you're doing something that your brain does not feel as though it's the whole if you love what you do, you're never going to work a day in your life. It's that kind of idea, but there's actually science behind that's actually true for your brain. You will not get as tired doing something that your brain finds to be food for the soul so much
Right.
than if you did something if you wake up and you dread what you're about to do that day. You're going to be more tired at the end of the day. Whereas if you wake up loving what you do or wanting to do it, you're not going to be as tired. And so that's a long way to say I agree with that idea of I go to theater to chill, even though you're writing just as much, if not more, even though you're on your feet just as much, if not more. Um, it's something your brain enjoys, so you don't feel exhausted when you're done.
Right.
So,
And I think that's such an important thing to teach humans
hmm
is that, work is there. But I have never felt um, in my career of doing theater, advocating for teachers, that I was, just, oh, it's so hard and I don't want to go and I don't want to do, just the opposite. People are having to pull me away, like, hey, we're going to close the school. You're still here. And it wasn't that I was rehearsing with kids. I was going back to my office, planning out things I needed to do. But even just, I was so engaged and engrossed in what I was doing that I didn't want to disconnect from that.
right,
And I think if you can tell people that, yeah, you've got to work in this world, but if you can find that connection, it's not a myth. I've never worked a day in my life because I did what I loved. But, yeah, there's tough times, but when you're doing something that you have passion for and you see that it has an impact on people, you will put in the extra time
right.
and how important that is to have that level of work ethic when you know that your work is important and it has a value. You'll do the work and you'll be happy.
So I typically want to end with advice, which that was, but I've got to talk about tea towel for at least a one question. But
Oh, please do.
so we'll end with this kind of maybe it'll be advice, maybe it won't be, maybe it'll be something that a new teacher can use. Not that this wasn't already stuff that people couldn't use, but you are very vocal on that Facebook page for us contest managers and adjudicators and such. Not vocal in a bad way. That sounds negative, but you're very active and you're very informative, letting us know, hey, this is happening. Make sure you got your judges, all that kind of stuff,
Right, right.
which is very helpful. So why are you passionate about it? Um, why do you feel such a need to kind of serve for us and and also advocate? But we've talked a lot about advocating. But why do you feel all that sense of kind of responsibility? Because I will say, as somebody that keeps I'm one of these people that likes to check things off of a list, right? So as an adjudicator, it's like the perfect or not adjudicator as a contest manager, it's like the perfect job because that's all we do is have I said this? Have I said this? Have I said? Sometimes I'll just say put on there, make sure they know there's breakfast. Like oh, check something else.
Right.
But you do a very good job of making sure that those ducks are in a row. What is it about that responsibility that you just enjoy so much?
I just think it's such a blessing that we have so many people who want to serve in the capacity of contest managers and adjudicators in the state. Um, you're not getting rich off of it. It truly is a service. and it's a service for our kids, but also for this industry as a whole. I am amazed when I leave Texas and talk to people about how much one act play is known outside of the state as this amazing training ground, an amazing celebration of educational theater. And that doesn't happen without a lot of people kind of paying back what they were given through one act play and UIL experiences through that adjudicating and contest managing. And I think all of us can tell numerous stories of those experiences really um, being special and giving faith to us about our future and what kids are going to be doing, and that they're doing amazing things, and so are their teachers. And as a teacher doing one act play, I was inspired by so many people. But learning those people who would give me that advice of like, well, have you thought about doing your practices this way? Have you thought about, timing this and rehearsing that? And those are, it's not that they're secrets, but it's, it's this kind of quilt that gets woven and patched together over time of kind of best practices. And to watch people light up when they see that you're willing to help them with that, I think is awesome, and such a treasure for us in this state. And so for those folks that are part of TTAO and have decided that they want to continue to serve in that capacity and help the whole system go right, we want to support that. We want you to know what you got to do to be up to date with your training, and make sure that you've booked your stuff and you've told people when you're available and that you remember, right? Because it's not our full-time job. And I think that the more we can support each other to really help that system work from a volunteer standpoint, the better. And I think the transparency with it, because as anyone can tell you who's gone through the system, whether as a kid or as a teacher, there's a lot of myths about what one act play is, right? And the more that we can be transparent and show people we're all just real people, and that we love theater. And at the end of the day, we use rubrics and we use checklists like contest managers do to make sure that we make this as fair a system as possible. I think that gives credence to the whole system. And so I'm proud to help support any way I can and keep our kids learning, keep our directors feeling confident and inspired, and feel like they have great adjudicators and contest managers that are there to support them.
Minor wisdom.